Welcome Squeezers! This video is on rhombi, squares, kites, and trapezoids. Some of this you probably already remember, but let's start with a rhombus. Let's start by sketching a rhombus, and we're going to label everything that we currently know about it. So a rhombus is kind of like a diamond. One of the important properties about a rhombus is that all sides are congruent or equal. Diagonals are also going to be perpendicular. They also bisect one another. Plus, they're going to have all of the properties of a parallelogram, which means that their opposite angles will be congruent, and so on and so forth. Find all the angles in the rhombus below. So, let's start and realize this one right here is 40 degrees. That's the first thing that's given to me. Now I know that the opposites are going to be congruent. I also know that all of the internal angles are 90 degrees, so I know y right off the bat is 90 degrees. That also gives me this angle right here. So I know that this has 90 and 40, which uses up 130, which means that x has to be equal to 50 degrees. And now looking at z, I can see that z and 40 are alternate interior, which means z is also equal to 40 degrees. Draw a square and mark it with all of the properties that you know. So a square has 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. It's also going to have diagonals that bisect each other at 90 degrees. This makes 2 triangles for us, which you can see. So a square is both a rectangle and a rhombus, therefore it's going to have 2 different definitions. A square can either be an equiangular rhombus or an equilateral rectangle. Given that ABCD is a square, find the values of x, y, and z. So at this point I know all of my side lengths are 10. I know that all of my corners are 90 degrees. I also know that y right here, so y is equal to 90 degrees. As I'm trying to find this, I'm going to break it into a triangle. So I am looking at this triangle right here that is 10 squared plus 10 squared to get my final side. If I do that, I'll get the square of 200. If I break that into 2, I can get z. So z is equal to square of 200 over 2. And we'll leave it unsimplified for now. We haven't gotten quite that far yet this year. And now lastly, I need to find x. If I'm trying to find x, I know these two are the same. I also know that my base angles are the same. This is 90 degrees, and since this is cutting right through it, that has to be 45 degrees. Label the vertex and non-vertex angles of your kite. So, my kite we've broken into non-vertex angles. And my vertex angles at the top and the bottom. The properties of a kite. This intersection right here is going to be a 90-degree angle. I also know that it creates a midpoint for this non-vertex angle length. The diagonals of a kite are perpendicular, so that's what gave me that. The diagonal connecting the vertex angles of the kite is perpendicular bisector of the other diagonal. So I don't know anything about the long length from vertex to vertex. I only know about the segment that runs from non-vertex to non-vertex. The non-vertex angles of a kite are congruent, and the vertex angles are connected by a diagonal, or bisected by a diagonal. If BD is 10 centimeters, find the measure of BE. So if that entire segment is 10, remember that these guys are bisected, so that means that has to be 5 centimeters. Find the degree measure of X and Y. I know that these angles are bisected, which means I'm dealing with 50 and 50. And down here, I'm dealing with 30 and 30 degrees. I also know that a quadrilateral is made up of 360 degrees. So if I take away the 100 from up top and the 60 from down below, I'm left with 200 to split. So X plus Y equals 200 degrees. Since I know that the non-vertex angles are congruent, I know that X is equal to 100 degrees and Y is equal to 100 degrees. Draw a trapezoid, label the bases and the two pair of base angles. So if I were to draw a trapezoid, I know that the top and bottom are parallel from one another. So the bases are parallel. The legs are not. I know that the base angles are going to be congruent. Or, sorry, supplementary. There's no great notation for that. So supplementary base angles, and that's really the only thing I have from just a basic trapezoid. An isosceles trapezoid, on the other hand, is going to give me a lot more information. So they're going to have congruent base angles, and they're going to have diagonals that are congruent as well. So if I sketch the best isosceles trapezoid that I can, my base angles are congruent, my bases are parallel. I'm going to find that my diagonals are congruent, and my sides are congruent. Find the degree measure of X and Y. Well, if I know that an entire trapezoid is made up of 360 degrees, I could take away the bottom two, or if I just look at this chunk right here, I can see that these guys are consecutive interior angles. So X and 70 need to add up to 180. That means X has to be 110 degrees. If I look at the other side, again, I have consecutive interior, so Y and 62 have to add up. So Y is equal to 118. Find the degree measure of X, Y, and Z. Pause the video, unpause when you're ready to check. Should have found x was 65, y and z were both 115. The mid-segment of a trapezoid is also going to give us a special relationship. So a segment connecting the midpoints of the two non-parallel sides of a trapezoid is called your mid-segment. So, making a sketch, if I drew a trapezoid, mid-segment is right there. I know that all of these three are parallel. The mid-segment of a trapezoid is parallel to the bases and is equal in length to the average of the two bases. So this average part is going to be important to you. If ABCD is a trapezoid, find the value of x. So if I know that x represents the average, I know that that is the top plus the bottom divided by 2. That gives me 86 over 2. So I know that x is equal to 43 centimeters. ABCD is a trapezoid. Find the value of x. Try this one on your own. Unpause when you're ready to check. Looking at this one, I now am given the average, so I know that x plus the bottom 48 over 2 is equal to 34. That means x plus 48 is equal to 68, which means x is 20 centimeters. Here's your homework. Have a great night.